Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our Sylvan educational seminar. Today, we have some amazing franchise owners who we're going to welcome into our discussion to hear their stories. Our belief is that if you can hear about their journeys on how did they perform research, what did it look like before they became a franchise owner, then hopefully it's going to give you some of the tools to evaluate how you're going to go about deciding whether this franchise opportunity makes most sense for you as you go on your journey of figuring out franchising. For those of you who are watching live, there is a chat feature. If you would like to ask questions of our group, feel free to ask, and I will make sure that we get those answered. We're going to go one by one through our storytellers as we learn more about them. So Russell and Susan, I'm going to welcome you guys first. Thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having me.
This is such a wide open question, but I would love to hear your story. What was going on before you even decided to become franchise owners? And then up to that point, like what was the trigger that made you even decide to inquire that Sylvan was the right brand for you guys?
Yep, no, absolutely. So, I mean, my background is retail management. I've been doing that for 10 years or so. I had multi-units that I was managing, and actually, honestly, it's really nice to be down to one for a bit. But pretty typical pandemic story. Business shut down. The company went to reopen, and we sort of got a disagreement about protocols. So I ended up not going back. And then Sue and I were we spent a few months trying to decide what we're going to do. What's our next step? What's this going to look like? And Sue, with her education degree, was looking at joining a Sylvan in Nanaimo as an employee. And then we sort of started looking at it a little harder and realized, honestly, we weren't thinking big enough.
Yeah.
And so we realized that I think the opportunity was to do this. I mean, I'd been doing budgeting for quite a bit, and I ran the numbers on the opportunity here, and it seemed great. And we've been open for 3 months now, and it's been going really well so far.
Yeah, no, it was really good because we sort of realized we liked being around each other during the pandemic because we were stuck together. And I think the other side of it too is once we started looking into it a little bit, I realized how little prep is involved as an educator. And I was like, oh, this is beautiful. All the lesson planning and everything's taken care of. And then you've got the business end. So it's perfect.
Did you think about franchising before that moment? Did franchising ever appear?
No, actually, we hadn't even really been considering it up until that point. Really, again, it was one of those things. We come from a smaller town. We'd been thinking small, and it sort of just was one of those aha moments. We were like, well, if you deal with the education side, I can deal with the business side, and we can work together. And it's like I say, that's sort of what led us down this path.
Yeah, and we sort of realized it was one of those things when you're off for that long, you sort of realize you don't quite have enough money to retire, but we definitely had enough not to work for somebody else. So that's sort of one of the things that led us down this path. And our kids have been in Sylvan for years in Nanaimo. So it was like, oh, hang on, this could be something really good.
So, I mean, another thing that I'm hearing about this, I mean, and this is going to swing into personal question, but like you guys, pandemic obviously has changed people's vision on is life short. You guys found that you enjoyed working with each other. Does the timing of just the reality that we're living, did that push you to say now was the right time? Did that change your course of decision?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we were first looking at this, it was last year, sort of early in the year, and things were sort of looking like it was coming down. We're like, okay, you know what? Let's make the move. Now's the time. The only real concerns we ran into were some supply chain stuff. I mean, it took a little bit longer than we were anticipating to get open, but I mean, we got delayed a month. It wasn't too bad.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it would have even happened without the pandemic, quite honestly.
Yeah, well, I would have just been working.
Yeah.
Like I would have kept working to the bone for my company instead of working for myself.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it gave us time to reevaluate everything. It was kind of nice.
Love So from a process standpoint, so looked at it as a potential job, realized you were thinking too small and changed that direction. Then you've now inquired, I assume, through the website, and then start going through the process. Were there any obstacles that you had to overcome mentally of becoming a franchisee? Was there anything that was scary that you had to get comfortable with that maybe someone else that's looking at doing the same thing is going through now?
For sure. Yeah, honestly, the big thing to start is I mean, you're not going to have the cash flow when you first open, right? There's a lot of, some front-end expenses getting the business running. There's some front-end expenses getting the products, all that sort of thing. That was really our main concern. Once we got the funding figured out for that, everything honestly has sort of been rolling as we were hoping it would. We've run into a couple obstacles, but nothing major.
Yeah. That was just sort of it. We were just trying to figure out how to fund it without really impacting our sort of personal finances, if that makes any sense, and keeping everything else intact. So it was kind of a little bit of a juggle with the bank, but it worked out.
When you guys were performing your due diligence, what sort of things did you do? Did you talk with franchise owners? Did you read the web? How did you prepare yourself for this?
Yep.
We Googled a lot. Like we were looking up Sylvan like mad. And then we started to just look at other franchises because we couldn't really find any dirt on Sylvan. We're like, that's interesting. Everybody's pretty happy with it. So then we were like, well, is this just normal for all franchises? And then we started looking, that's when we started looking at other franchises and went, oh no, this is kind of unique, because most of the other ones we looked at, there was a lot of angry franchisees and we didn't find any of that with Sylvan. And now that we're within too, same deal. Everybody seems pretty happy and that's good.
Yeah. And quite honestly, before we even started talking with Sylvan, like before we even contacted them, I'd already done the budgeting projections. I'd run everything. I'd run the expenses, what we needed to work, and it seemed perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
And like I say, it's been following that pattern, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So you did end up looking at other brands in the process, just from a comparable, but you kept on coming back to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Honestly, again, some of the other, I mean, we've got some friends that were franchise owners and they've run into struggles with the companies they were dealing with. We've read some articles about other franchises, not even educational related, just in general,
right.
That there was a lot of, it was almost a adversarial relationship, and that is not what we're experiencing here.
Not at all. I'm feeling very supported by corporate, quite honestly. It's great.
Love it. And then the last question, and we'll get to like a round robin of questions shortly, but so now that you talk about thinking small, now you're thinking big, does big change? Do you think about growth and scale? Is it too early? Like, where's your mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been in for 3 months. And honestly, we were up to, I think, 17 students so far. So we're getting a couple every week, which is fantastic. I think we're going to run out of teachers before we run out of students. But yeah, no, it's been right along the lines of what we're looking for. I mean, January was a little slower than we were expecting, but there were a lot of issues with the pandemic and such that were related to that. And the minute those concerns started to wane, we started getting calls again. So,
yeah, and like long term, our territory is actually huge. So we've got a couple towns within our territory. So there's some areas that we have an eye on for satellites that have a pretty good population base that we could use too.
I love it. Okay, I'm going to bring you guys back just in a little bit. Thanks for starting to share your story.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So obviously, like as we go through these different journeys, you're going to start to see some similarities on how franchise prospects go from being prospect to franchise owners. And again, as you guys have questions, if you want to throw it into the chat, happy to get those addressed. The next story that I want to hear is Leah's. Leah, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So same sort of opening question. What's your story? How did you even get to this being a possibility? What was your journey like, et cetera?
Yeah, well, I have a long journey with Sylvan, actually. I have worked with Sylvan for 15 years now. I started as a tutor while I was working in the local school districts here, and became director of education after a few years. Really worked in the center with my local franchisee, and then I started working for the corporate office. So I worked for the corporate office for about 7 years, and it was able to enjoy working in multiple departments in their operation support. And then the opportunity presented itself to do a purchase of the local franchise that was here for me. So 2 years ago, I took over ownership of the center.
Were you more comfortable because you were behind the scenes, or being a first-time franchisee, did you still go through all the jitters of, wow, I actually own a business now?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, I felt very comfortable knowing that, yes, I can go into this. I know what I'm doing. I can handle this. And I just felt like as a business owner though, okay, now I'm stepping into new shoes, right? Like I need to put on my business owner suit now. I have the education background. I have the corporate background. Sylvan is running through me, but business owner, I need to switch gears.
So in that mindset, I mean, if I'm looking at franchisees in general, especially first-time franchise owners, you built up a career of expertise in education. Check mark, you got the down and operational side. But you've never been in labor relations in that sense, where every dollar that is spent on labor is coming out of your own pocket, or any of the challenges of working with parents. Like now they are your real customers. Do you feel like knowing the support and knowing what was behind you helped smooth that out a little bit as you went through the process?
Absolutely. I felt completely comfortable knowing that I have a team I can go to if I have questions, I need some support, whether that's with my corporate team and my franchise business consultant or other franchisees that are super supportive. I knew that I had that team. I had a wonderful mentor in the previous franchisee here. So I really felt supported, and I feel supported every day as I go through this.
Do you feel, I mean, as a brand, because you bleed Sylvan, do you feel like the world, whether that's the business world or even all the way to parent-child, does Sylvan get the credit for what's behind the brand that is all working together and almost an education community to impact the lives of so many different communities?
Right. And I think that's something that I strive to do every day here in my local community, right? I want people to know what Sylvan is, right? And that's something that I'm working on, and just making sure that people understand that I am a partner with them. And, Sylvan is behind everybody. So Sylvan supports me, I support them. We are part of our Sylvan community, our Sylvan family. And we are here for help.
I would imagine people that are watching this, it's not whether they have the financial wherewithal to become a franchise owner. It's probably something that is fear-based, something that's preventing them from saying now is the time. As you go through every day, is there any fears that come up that you have to overcome because you are a first-time business owner that you could actually give advice to for anybody that's potentially looking at this business?
Yeah, I think just being able to keep myself organized in the sense of staying in a business mindset, right? So yes, you're right. Like I have this education background, but really just keeping myself organized and thinking business. Okay, I can make these two connected. I can do that. Really just refocusing all of my attention on being a business owner is what's important to me. It kind of is on my to-do list every day, right? Business owner, business owner, business owner.
Who do you lean on for mentorship or advice if you need it?
As I said, I had a great mentor in the previous owner here, where, we've always had a relationship where I felt like I could go and ask questions. My franchise business consultant is amazing, always available for me. If I have questions, I can send a quick message, pick up the phone, and I always feel like I have that support.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's the biggest obstacle to get over, because the line is you're in business for yourself, just not by yourself. And the reality is like that is true. But at the end of the day, you are still by yourself. You need to look around and see what resources can you actually access to make sure that they work for you. So, all right, Leah, we'll get back to you in just a minute. I want to welcome in William too, just so that we can finish out our storytelling. William, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thank you.
Would love to hear your story. What was going on before Sylvan? What was your buying process like? How did you become a franchise owner? Tell us your story.
So with me, I came from more of a resale channel versus just spinning up an entire new center. I actually was a CEO of an IT firm and learned about this opportunity through one of the existing parents The facility, the current owners were looking at potentially closing the facility. And so the parent knew that I am a entrepreneur and like to look at different opportunities. So I was presented with the Sylvan opportunity. And with that, started working with the previous owner, and started looking at everything about the business, putting business acumen around the numbers and how it worked. And then from there, it made perfect sense. I'm from a family of educators. And so my dad was an educator, my mom's an educator, my sister and many of my aunts and cousins are educators now. And so I've always wanted to get back and started doing education, something more than what I'm doing in engineering. So Sylvan actually made sense. And for there, I made the decision to move forward.
All right. So much to unpack there. So first, like you're the only one in the family that doesn't follow the track. So you go from being the disappointment to now you're like, I'm on board. I'm one of you now.
Exactly. Now I'm part of the fold, and now actually where I can be very tactical about what I'm doing in education and focusing on kids that really need the help. And then with the STEM program, that ties back to my technology background. And that really what tipped the scale with me with Sylvan. Because a lot of tutoring franchises out there, they are not doing STEM the way that Sylvan is doing it. And so to have that STEM component really resonated with me and made me really want to get involved, especially looking at the next generation of people that's going to be in society. Technology is going to be key.
So, okay. So with your IT background, do you feel like, even though the education is in the blood, but did you feel like, okay, that's given you a pathway into STEM, so that makes you feel comfortable with a business opportunity like this? Was there any fear of not, being a former teacher or someone or an educator? Was there any fears that you had?
No, I didn't have any fears from that perspective. Education is kind of relative. You can always be an educator and don't be one that's certified to actually teach in the school. So I didn't have any fears on that. And then with buying an existing center that had teachers in place, staff in place, that made the transition even more comfortable to be able to move forward, bring the business acumen to it, to really start driving the center and increasing the growth, increasing the revenue, and then bringing some of my technology experience to improve internal processes that we have in place to make things move more efficient as we scale.
How was your buying process? What did it look like? I mean, you clearly looked at some other education brands, but what was that process like? And what things scared you about this? That, obviously you're going from being an entrepreneur where you own your own business to being one where you're a franchisee. It's slightly different, but what other things did you look at to get comfortable with?
Yeah, I think the big thing that looking at up front was just looking at the historical numbers. Those numbers weren't in an attractive manner as you would look at a business. But I understood it was in COVID, right? So there was a huge impact and all of that. And so the center was just kind of digging out from COVID. And so the numbers showed in that. When you look at a business, you don't like seeing negative numbers, but I understood why it was negative, looked at everything that was happening and felt comfortable that I can come on board and then turn it around.
Are you still operating your IT business, or did you completely transition into this?
No, I'm still running my IT firm. And so I have great staff over there. So now I am spending, 80-90% of my days here at Sylvan, bringing all of the lessons learned that I've done before over to this business. And it's been great. I actually like being here more than wrestling with the IT firm. It's very impactful what I'm seeing, making changes on lives of students, and that is excellent.
Okay, love it. I'm going to welcome everyone back in. Leah, I understand there's snow coming your way, so we won't.
It's here.
It hit us in Chicago too, so we're not going to make you stay for a long time. So I'll give you a follow-up question first, and then you can certainly drop off so that you can get a jump on that.
Great.
So from getting going and growing, what's your dream now? What does it look like? Where does your future go with the business as a franchisee that not corporate, you're a franchisee now?
Right. So my dream going into this really, and of course, it was right as the pandemic was hitting. So it's been on the back burner a little bit, but my dream is to expand in the territory. You know, I have a design set on satellites, and I'm looking forward to taking this family that I have here and sharing it with the rest of the population around me.
I love it. We'll let you bounce to stay safe.
Thank you.
Go home. Thanks for joining us. All right, to the rest of you now we'll keep going through some follow-up questions. So from I want to go back into due diligence a little bit more, and maybe Russell and Susan, I'll start with you, and then William, I'll go to you second. As you were talking with franchisees, what questions were you asking them about their buying process to make them feel comfortable that made them feel comfortable becoming franchise owners?
Well, the franchise that is in our area that's just south of us, she's been in the biz for decades. So she was a huge wealth of knowledge as far as what procedurals look like and that sort of thing. And honestly, I mean, I understand retail. I didn't know this business as well as I could have. I know it a lot better now. But she was a hugely great resource for helping me figure out, what expenses I might not have been thinking of to go into it. Things that you need to sort of look at an annual review as opposed to, just sort of buying it and forgetting about it later. Just making sure that you can get those budgets in and they're as accurate as possible so you know where your break even is.
And William, what about you? What questions were you asking to franchisees? Obviously, you're buying a unit, but an existing unit, but are you talking with other franchise owners to do your due diligence, or are you convinced that this is the right brand for you fairly quickly?
Actually, so up front, when I started looking at the numbers, I really started working backwards and talking directly to corporate and understanding what does a center look like. Let's talk about the numbers on a historical basis. And then from there, started drilling into actually the franchise disclosure agreement, started drilling through that, understanding all of the mechanics. And then given that this is an existing center, been here over 30 years, what does the new license look like when I move forward from a royalty perspective and all of the fees? And so with that, I spent most of my time working directly with corporate and the resale group to understand what it looks like going forward. Because we don't have any other centers in this state, I really didn't have the luxury to kind of talk to other franchisees in the area. But there is one south of me in Louisiana that I have the fortunate to have an ex-director from that franchisee that's here that actually helped me with a lot of the experiences that they were having in that state and what I can expect here as I move forward.
So when you're working through the numbers, and both you and Russell, the numbers guys, trying to make sure that your planning is correct. William, are you thinking about multi-unit growth? At what point do you start thinking about, do I add another location? Is that even in the mindset as a part of how you're setting up your due diligence?
That's an excellent question. That was the main reason I even started looking at this, was looking at multi-unit. When you start looking at franchisees, I mean, one unit is great, but really you want us to be a multi-franchise owner and start scaling. And so that was the other second point that tipped the scale for me to move forward, was the opportunity of growth within the state. And so we've already started getting satellites approved and going to start moving forward with those expansion, prove those territories out, then start standing up full brick and mortar franchises in those areas.
Well, I think there's a good piece of advice for anybody that is looking at the opportunity, is to, even if you may not be ready for scale on day one, evaluate it as a part of your process. Because, well, and it obviously depends what your life goals or your wealth building goals are. What is your exit plan with a business like this? But if you're looking at scale, then you're building a business. You're not just operating a single unit.
A center. Yeah, absolutely. We've got, I think, 2 satellite areas we were looking at, and then honestly, we're looking up at maybe picking up another territory in a couple of years once this one's rolling its own rev. So
yeah.
Russell and Susan, I heard you guys mention this, and I think it's an important thing to talk about. How do we overcome this as franchisees? But you said, we might have a shortage of teachers, which this is a big issue across our entire country. primarily for schooling versus Sylvan, but how do you guys overcome that? How do you build culture with your staff? How do you stay positive about recruiting in the right people? Russell and Susan, I'll start with you, and then William, I'll go to you.
We do a few things. One of the big things is we sort of go for the substitute teachers, and we try to make our center a home base that they can operate out of. So they've got free run of our copy room. We've got some, we were actually really lucky. We got some fairly specialized equipment when a legal firm went down. So they can use all of that.
Fancy binding machine.
Yeah, we got a fancy binding machine. They can use the laminator. They can use the Cricut. They can use all of that. So that's there for them. The other thing is we've got a nice staff room. There's coffee in there for them. So if one of our teachers really likes to come in and decompress after a day in the public system, she usually comes in about half hour early and just chills out in the staff room with her coffee. So it's sort of like we try to keep it a really upbeat, positive place. And then the nice thing too about a Sylvan is usually teaching's quite solitary. And this is sort of unique that there'll actually be a few of us in the same room teaching at the same time. So there's a little bit of collaboration there. And if you can really foster that and encourage that, that's huge for teachers because that's really unique, honestly.
And what about you, William? How are you handling labor and culture and building up your right team?
Well, for us, being a resale, we had an existing staff base, so it was really more around retention. So in there, immediately, one of the things that's definitely motivator is dollars, right? So raise the salaries that the teachers were receiving, previously, and then as we started moving forward, that salary rate is higher. Now, one of the things that we're doing is actually leveraging referrals because teachers know teachers. And then they've had a great experience. And a lot of the teachers have been here 5+ years, some even more, 10, 15. And so with that, they're able to market and sell to other teachers the benefit of being here. I think one of the things that is really refreshing to teachers is in a traditional classroom, they have students of, 20, 25 at a time, rotating out, throughout the days, upwards of 7 classes. Here, they have a 3-to-1 ratio. Whole lot less students to manage, and so that is very comforting for the teachers. And then also we even look at those teachers that have retired that still want to be educated, but they don't want to be fully back in the system. This kind of gives them kind of a halfway point that they can still do what they have been passionate about for years, but not at full scale like being inside of the school system.
Well, William, I think that's a really big point that gives you an advantage when we're hearing about teachers leaving school districts. You're saying, look, we might have a solution that allows you to still be passionate and live out your passions, but maybe in a more micro setting. So it doesn't have to be your full-time job if you're looking to try doing something else.
Exactly.
What about marketing? I'll go Russell and Susan first. On marketing, how are you guys handling that locally? How are you getting the word out? What is some of the advice that you would have for a new franchise owner that's joining?
Yeah, for sure. The big one that I honestly believe that we have, we got one of the arena boards at the hockey arena. So basically every hockey kid, every figure skating kid, and all their families see it. It's there. It's just in the background, and so if they're looking for help, that's going to be the first place they go. That's been doing really well. We've been finding the Facebook marketing has been fantastic, doing the digital stuff. And then we've got an ad up at the airport, which is doing pretty well. We're in a military town that has a lot of oil sands travel too. So there's people traveling to and from Alberta and Saskatchewan from us in BC. So we hit them with that. And then we've got a new locally targeted magazine. These things are amazing. So they look like they're locally made, but they're done from a larger company that geocenters it on one sort of small area. And it focuses on the families in that area. So the readership's really high. Yeah. And we've got ourselves in there as sort of as the educational expert. So we get free advertorials every quarter. And I think it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, Facebook's been absolutely fantastic. I had some experience with it from volunteering for my son's school. And it's actually not too hard to manage. And it's really interesting because you can hone in on the area and you can hone in on interest. So one of the things that we do is we sort of pick the more affluent brands. So we go, if they like Starbucks, if they like Disney, like we sort of go for those core, just slightly more affluent brands. And we've gotten a lot of hits from Facebook for new families. I'd say probably half our families have come in from Facebook.
Yeah, in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's been wild. And
do you feel like you have for the two of you, do you feel like you have autonomy on this? And that's good. That's good because you're able to pick where you want to spend your dollars. But Do you feel like you get to have say on how your marketing works?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
And I think having that opportunity is great because you can't do the same marketing in every market. It just doesn't work that way. Having the opportunity to be able to localize on what your business and your community needs, you're going to have way better results.
Love it. And William, how are you handling marketing in your market?
Yeah, so we're handling from really a three-pronged approach. So to Russell and Susan, we're doing the same thing as far as on Facebook and all of those type of things. But being an existing center, the brand in itself actually does a great deal of the marketing for us. But what we've done is it has extended to working with a lot of the nonprofits and then reaching out to them, partnering with them, sponsoring some of their events, and giving back into the community. And so we're taking that approach and we're getting a lot of feedback from that. But one of the things I will commend, Sylvan Corporate, when they run these national campaigns, we get a lot of inquiries. And then so the next step is really converting those inquiries into actual customers.
Love it. William, I'll start with you on this one. So obviously the pandemic, whether that was virtual learning or pure disruption, classrooms getting shut down, seems to have opened up a tremendous opportunity where there's going to have to be supplemental education to help catch children up to be at the grade level or at education level that they need to be. When you're looking at a business and you're looking at the value of the product, does that play into benefit here that you see a tremendous opportunity, not only to impact, but area of opportunity of a potential customer base?
Absolutely. And so that's another reason looking at moving forward with Sylvan, it had a very methodical process in how they educate and bring students up to the next level. And given them in technology, looking at Sylvan Sync and how they deliver things and the agility to be able to do it remotely via different devices, I saw that as a huge opportunity and flexibility to be nimble. And so with that, as we move forward on our institutional track, that's going to be definitely key to our success in working with school districts to be able to deliver those services at their location via the technology that we have in the center.
I love it. And what about Russell and Susan? What's your guys' take on the lay of the land when it comes to obviously potential customers and how education has been disrupted, but do you see the same opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's gonna last, honestly, decades. I was in the school system for the beginning of the pandemic right through to the end of 2020. And even when the schools were open, the stress levels of the staff and the students was high enough that there really wasn't even a lot of learning going on. So even if the schools are open and functioning as normal, it's not normal right now. And any kids that already have anxiety issues or any sort of neurodivergence, they're going to have an extra hard time with this, and they're falling further behind. And I think we saw a chart last night that, if your student is in grade 9 right now, or grade 8, if they're in grade 8, the last normal grade they had was grade 5, which is just absolutely crazy to think about. Yeah. And then you get into kindergarten and grade 1 and 2, they've never had a normal year. There's tons of kids that still aren't going to preschool. So even the kids that aren't even entering the system yet, they're going to be coming in, a lot of them behind, because their parents didn't send them to preschool. So the effects of this are going to be so long standing. So I think we have a really important role to play for families who accessed us to help their kids sort of reach where they should have been if this had not happened.
Well, I think you just created the next invention. It's called 13th grade and 14th grade. We just got to grade out there, right? So, okay, in closing, maybe what are you most excited about? We'll go Russell and Susan first, and then William. What are you most excited about for this upcoming year and in the future with Sylvan?
For me, I'm excited for growth. I can see it. I had a couple of projections, and in the last couple of weeks, I'm going to have to reproject them because I'm starting to get way more inquiries than I was. Looking forward to getting that growth to the point that we can cover all of our expenses, and then I can look at expanding. That's sort of my goal anyways.
Yeah. And then me as the educator, I'm like, I get to meet all these new kids, and it's wonderful because it's such a small ratio. You get to know them so well, like to actually get to sit with 3 kids for an hour and just really get to know them. Like we've got one kid that comes in 4 days a week, and I think I talk to him more than my own kids right now, which is horrible, but they're teenagers and they're kind of done with me. So it's just absolutely fantastic.
I love it. I mean, that's where beyond business, obviously anybody that's opening up a business will look at dollars and cents. Like that's a part of the model, but to have something that makes you have those goosebumps, that know that you're providing something that is meaningful, is pretty powerful. William, what are you most excited about with the future?
To Russell and Susan point, growth, looking at how to scale and, open up more centers. But then on the actual soft side of things, to Susan's point, really to see these kids evolve, right? And see the smile on their face when they see, oh, I did it. I have achieved better than I did last month, and they continue to grow. And then even far out in the future, be somewhere walking down the street and a kid walk up to me and say, hey, I used to go to Sylvan, and because I went to Sylvan, I am doing XYZ. If it wasn't for Sylvan, I wouldn't even be, at this college or at this job. I really think what Sylvan did for me to, get me where I am today.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of businesses like this, is it's far beyond business, and you continue to do good things for your community and the people around, and business continues to grow. It takes care of itself. So for Russell and Susan and William, I'm Nick Powles. I appreciate your guys' time. I know it's valuable. I appreciate everybody that was able to watch us on our live webinar. And I look forward to hearing where your stories go. Lots of great things coming in the future. So thank you so much for your guys' time.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, see ya.